She was my number one draft pick, and we'll see how she works out. She did very, very poorly in the primaries, as you know. She was expected to do well. One of the reasons that surprised me, she was probably nastier than even Pocahontas to Joe Biden. She was very disrespectful to Joe Biden, and it's hard to pick somebody that's that disrespectful.
Yesterday, Joe Biden finally chose his running mate, and it is Kamala Harris from California. Now, honestly, I understand why a lot of people are excited, and I think she's a very qualified person who will definitely give Mike Pence a shake during the debates. But that being said, I don't like the choice. And today on the Tonic Accord, I'm going to tell you why. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Tonic Accord podcast. Alex Kapitko here, and I just want to run off some of my thoughts on Joe Biden's official pick of Kamala Harris as his VP running mate. So Biden called Harris this week a fearless fighter for the little guy and one of the country's finest public servants. And he lauded her tenure as California's Attorney General. And honestly, that's a pretty accurate take he has there. She is a successful public servant who is intelligent, quick-witted, and has a long just public record in general. I do find this all ironic, though, because literally like 6 months ago, these two were rivals that both seemed to have a completely different view of where America should go. And just before I get into more of my analysis, I just want to recap some of the best moments from the debates where you see such a clear schism between the two. And you see Harris not completely going to racism, but stopping just short of calling Biden linked to racial policies. And so it's just fascinating for me to see this kind of completely flip on how they now view each other. And so let's just take a look.
I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true.
Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America? Then,
no.
Do you agree?
So now they are friends. And for a while, I've thought that if Biden was elected come November, or maybe December by the time the results come in, and I want to talk about that in a whole other episode, but Biden's going to be a one-term president. So I've kind of felt that whoever his running mate is definitely going to be basically maybe the runner-up for president one day. And so I think a lot of Americans like Harris kind of in this role. I understand why. And yeah, I think this is kind of grooming her for the next step. I think we tend to forget that back during the debates, she was quite unpopular and seemed to have a lackluster policy identity and agenda. So I don't know. We're going to see what happens. But for this case, Harris is a good sell due to name recognition, and she's not Trump. And she's more popular amongst independents than Elizabeth Warren, and she has more experience than Stacey Abrams, and she doesn't have the police problems in Minnesota like Amy Klobuchar did. So, America, this is your choice. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least. So I think for a lot of weeks now, we've been hearing a multitude of different names. And I personally wanted Susan Rice because I usually applaud pragmatic diplomats and people with a lot of foreign service expertise. And I think Susan Rice, is quite intelligent. And I think she could have worked well with Biden, especially because she has worked Biden in the past. But then again, I clearly do understand how someone like Rice could be politically divisive and could be a casualty on the political arguments, mainly due to her connections with Benghazi, though I don't really think there's much there, and her connections with the Clintons and what a lot of Republicans would say was the deep state under Obama. All of it BS, but I can understand why she would be politically toxic when it's an election such as this one. So yesterday, I heard several people and talked to several others, and all of them felt like Kamala would be a good president if Biden were to be weakened or unable to do his job. And so, yes, Kamala is healthy and young and quite smart. And I do think, though, that she is the wrong candidate at the wrong time. Now, I have two reasons for this. First, I feel like when Biden announced that his running mate would be a woman, it was kind of a bad way to start things off because all he did was craft a picture frame with a specific type of person inside of it. And that person herself wouldn't really matter as much as the idea of who she was supposed to be. So this inevitably was going to lead to his running mate facing the forces of tokenism, right? She's always going to be that token first lady who is the first African American and the first woman. And I'm happy that we have got to that place in this country, but I think the way Biden did it was not the correct way to do it. So it's also interesting because I think he should have never mentioned that his running mate was going to be a woman. He should have just done it and led by action. And I think it would have sent a stronger message than just promising from the beginning, which was clearly just a political litmus test in some ways. So the other reason that I think Kamala could be tough right now is because of her strength and arguably her biggest weakness. And it is basically, I mean, she is known as being an effective prosecutor, right? And we've even seen that in the public eye during the Kavanaugh trial and the Kavanaugh hearing, right? And she's an effective DA. She was an effective attorney general, and she locked up a lot of people during her time. And this is problematic right now because, you know, the criminal justice system is being overly scrutinized under the field of systematic racism. And I just don't know if a trigger-happy district attorney is exactly the best person for the moment. I get it, but I don't know if it's proper. And I mean, this is also one of the reasons why Amy Klobuchar, who was at one time a top pick to be Biden's running mate, kind of fell out of favorability because of her track record in Minneapolis and Minnesota. So it's interesting to me, but I think we're going to have Republicans play off of this. And I want to play a clip from yesterday from Trump's press conference when he found out about Kamala Harris. So let's
Senator Harris's record, you had a pretty quick response to that. You had an ad out that said that she was a phony, and I wanted to drill down.
She was a what?
Phony. And I wanted to ask about a specific example that a lot of people thought was a phony moment. As San Francisco DA, she oversaw, according to the Mercury News, 1,900 marijuana convictions. But she was asked in an interview last year if she had smoked marijuana, and she appeared to joke and, according to some people, lie and say that she was listening to Snoop Dogg and Tupac while their music hadn't come out at the time, while she said she was smoking pot, listening to it. Why would she lie about that? Do you see that as more evidence? Is there past on marijuana liability?
Well, she lied. I mean, she said things that were untrue. She is a person that's told many stories that weren't true. She's very big into raising cats.
So, I mean, I think obviously it's expected that Trump's going to say these exact things. So I'm kind of taking everything there with a grain of salt. And also, I don't think Trump is really the best one to talk about this because he himself is great at pretending to be something he's not, 2016. But there is an ounce of truth here, and I kind of saw it during the debates. Harris felt sort of out of touch. She was always trying to kind of appeal to wherever the wind was blowing, you know. She adopted parts of Warren's plan, parts of Bernie's, and she seemed to discredit Biden every time as kind of an outdated racist. So I find that kind of interesting that now they're from rivals to friends or frenemies, or I don't really know. I don't know. But it just seems that Harris puts her finger in the wind and sees where it's going. And she's kind of down to adopt whatever policies are necessary to win. And I think voters can see through that. And that echoes parts of Hillary Clinton to me. Both, you know, great politicians, clever women, definitely qualified for the job. But I just get kind of the fact there's not a lot of authenticity. So I'm not going to go out on a limb yet and say that, you know, Harris is going to lose this or win this for Biden, because research shows that in past elections, a vice president really doesn't make or break a president's chances of victory unless they're just completely toxic or completely lovable. And I think like a good example of that would be John McCain, where he was doing quite well, and then Sarah Palin turned out to be a bit of a gamble that failed, and it really hurt his campaign. So I don't think Harris is anything like that. So I think as long as she can appeal to moderates, then she'll do okay. And maybe that's enough because Harris is obviously popular with a lot of younger Democrats. She's very milquetoast with independents, which is okay because they could kind of go either way. And she's really only disliked by conservatives and especially Trumpist conservatives. So I'm not too worried about them. So throw conservatives out the door. And if she can just get some independents or at least appeal to some of those Obama-Trump voters, then it would be key. Now, I read an interesting piece about how California conservatives already have tried to destroy Harris during her bid as district attorney back in the mid-2000s and then again in the 2010s, and it almost worked. There was a lot of kind of brutal attack ads against her criminal records, her locking up of first-time offenders, and I would imagine there's going to be a similar campaign against her, and it's going to be strong. And who knows, it may work, especially in places like Middle America. And that's where I'm worried. So that kind of gets to, I was mentioning earlier that a lot of independents seem to be kind of milquetoast or just kind of to Kamala Harris. I worry that Biden, who is an East Coast former senator, and Harris, a senator from California, running together doesn't really cut out the notion of Democrats caring about the middle of the country. So that is a problem to me, is I was really thinking that it would have been smarter for Biden to pick someone who can appeal to the other side of culture right now, not just kind of this coastal Democratic Party. I just again worry that Democrats are more concerned about appealing to the most vocal part of their party at the expense of what could win the election. Democrats, like always, seem to fall in love, and Republicans seem to fall in line. We saw that in 2016, and we have seen it kind of in this Trump era, and even before in the Obama era. And I'm someone who, like I've said, doesn't want 4 more years of Trump. But it seems like it's becoming more likely, and we need to hope that blue-collar Joe Biden can help, right? And again, to reiterate my point, another problem is that Kamala is considered part of the San Francisco Democrats group. You know, she's kind of that Democratic establishment from the Bay Area, and more specifically San Francisco. And I think that could also be a problem because a lot of moderates, even moderate Democrats, and a lot of conservatives kind of see San Francisco as a failed Democratic city. They don't really see it as the beacon of hope on the hill for where a city should be working. And so let's take conservatives and hope that Biden's independents go Biden. But again, I just don't think San Francisco's establishment is really a good message about kind of bipartisan moderation, and I don't think it's going to appeal to a lot of the country. So it's just going to be interesting, but I don't think this is a slam dunk. And that's the point I'm trying to make here, is that I think there are still a lot of variables. And I also think that only time will tell if this pair actually works together well. You know, I just think a lot of conservative ads are going to attack her authenticity. And if they go into that again, yes, there's probably parts of sexism in there, but there's also probably parts of kind of the same attacks they used on Hillary Clinton that worked. But now the elephant in the room, of course, is that it's Biden versus Trump. I feel like I'm watching preseason NFL football where I don't really care because none of the people I like are playing, but I'm just kind of watching going, well, I guess hopefully my team wins, even though no one I know is playing. So maybe Harris, maybe she's going to defy my doubts. I just worry that America has forgotten about her debate performance and her clear struggles, and Joe Biden's now put up the picture frame, and he ended up forcing himself politically to pick a woman. And hopefully this is the right thing to do. So I'm curious to know you guys' thoughts. Is this a good decision? Should he have picked someone like Susan Rice? Should he have picked like a Stacey Abrams? Let me know. It's early. Are you getting concerned? Do you feel like this election's a lock for Biden, for Trump? Am I completely wrong? Please let me know. And we'll be back later this week with a discussion with Drew on political advertising and some of our favorite political ads.